Morning to you all, and welcome to this Esri UK Tech Webinar Series 2022. Today's webinar is on collaborative working with ArcGIS Online. My name is Oliver Pannell, and I'm a GIS consultant within the Critical National Infrastructure team here at Esri UK, and I'm joined today by Rowan.
Hi everyone, my name's Rowan Tolfs and I'm a graduate GIS consultant currently in a rotation in the pre-sales department.
So some quick notes on housekeeping before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and a link will be shared with you in the follow-up email that you will receive after today. The follow-up email will also include links to any useful resources. However, you will also have a chance to ask questions during a Q&A session at the end. You can also submit questions at any time during the webinar using the chat function. And we will also be sharing a feedback form with you all so you can share any thoughts or comments on today's webinar. So let's move on and start looking at the basics of a collaboration. Within ArcGIS, there are four main methods of sharing content across ArcGIS Online, as well as within ArcGIS Enterprise deployments. These are by using a set sharing level, by sharing data with a group, and through partner or distributed collaborations. Setting the sharing level at the item level for a layer, map, or app is the simplest way of changing access to content in ArcGIS Online. By changing the sharing level or permission, which is shown clearly in the video on the right, you can choose from three distinct settings, which include keeping the content private, so only you can access, to share content across your organization, so all members of your organization have access, and finally, to open up your content to everyone, i.e. the public. A core feature of ArcGIS Online and Enterprise is group creation, which can be used to share content to specific people within and outside of your organization. All members of the group can contribute data, or this can be limited to individuals specified by the group manager. The members can be curated so that any content that you add to the group is as confidential as it needs to be. The group can even be invisible to other members of your organization, except administrators that can see all of the organizational information. Partner collaboration is when two different ArcGIS Online organizations link, allowing closer collaboration. Some features include quicker adding of partner organization members to groups and seeing their organization from within the group members list. Most importantly, it allows shared configuration of apps, which can take place in groups set up by a collaboration coordinator called shared update groups. Descriptions, tags, and toggles in the settings tabs of regular content can also be edited by either organization. This sets up an even ground where members of both organizations have the same privileges around these items and both organizations can manage them in the same way. In contrast to previous methods, distributed collaboration can involve both an online account and an enterprise account. It allows you to mirror content between organizations, establishing a trusted connection between the two. Whilst two versions of one dataset are technically created, one on the ArcGIS Online organization and one on the ArcGIS Enterprise organization, they can be set to sync and data will update at set intervals as it is edited in each of the organizations. Data is used and consumed like any other group shared content in each of the organizations, meaning it is easy to transfer content for sharing.
So now we're going to talk about a few scenarios to put these different sharing methods into context. Our first scenario is a common one. Imagine that I am a GIS manager and I've built an app to send to a supervisor in the company to oversee the company's operations. However, I don't want the supervisor to be able to edit the app or the data within it, as they have no need to. Sharing this data is a simpler process than it sounds. All you have to do is share the app and the supporting data within a private group containing only you and the supervisor. By default, apps cannot be edited by others in or out of your organization. Additionally, for the app to function for them, the supervisor will need to have access to the base data that feeds into the app. Because of this, you'll also need to share a non-editable version of the base data and web map with the group. So, let's run through that process. This is the dashboard that I wish to share with the supervisor, with all that summative information on it. We can also see this in the content section of ArcGIS Online. We've got all the important data in this group here. In this folder. We're using a dashboard, but the same process will work for any app that you create. So we're going to go into the base data now and ensure and double check that the data editing is turned off. So we go to the item, we go to settings, and if we scroll down, we can see that editing is already unchecked. So let's just save our settings. And now that that's all sorted, we'll need to create the group that we're going to share the content with the supervisor in. So if we go to groups, then we click create group in the top left. There are a number of different options which we can customize here, which we're going to customize to our needs today. So let's give it a name, select dashboard sharing. We want only group members to be able to see this, and I'm going to set any organization's members to be allowed to be part of this group because of the account that I'm going to add for the purpose of this demo. You also want to make sure that shared update is not checked with this group. So if we press save, that'll create the group here. Now we want to invite the user. So if we click invite users, and I'm going to search for this other account that I'm using for the purpose of this demo. And there I am. So we invite the users, and now we need to add the items to the group. So again, on the right-hand side, we press a button that says add items to group, and it'll come up with a list of our content. So we just simply want to check the items and then press add items. And there we have it. All of the content is now successfully shared with the supervisor. So for scenario 2, imagine that I'm that same GIS manager, but now the data set that feeds into that dashboard needs to be edited by another member of the company. For this, I've created an editing app that I want this person to use to edit the data, and I need to share that app with them. So the solution in this scenario is similar to the last one. You've got to share the data and the app with the relevant individual in a private group. However, this time the data has got to be editable. You might remember that we turned off editing for the base dataset in the last section. However, I've created an editable version of that layer called a hosted feature layer view that feeds into the editing app. We'll talk about feature layer views in a moment, but for now, let's just treat it like a normal dataset. So let's have a look at this demonstration. This is the app that I've made in order for this employee to edit the dataset. So when we select a feature, we can see that a tailored list of attributes appears on the right. This is a benefit of using an app for data editing. Rather than recommending someone edit the feature layer directly in ArcGIS Online, using this app means you can customize and streamline the editing process, only showing the important fields. So again, we've got all the important content in this folder here that we want to share with people. So just to double check, we're going to go again into the settings of that feature layer, and this time make sure that editing is enabled. So in the same way, we click settings and we scroll down and we can see, yep, editing's ticked there. So we've skipped the group creation process because it's exactly the same as the last one, but this is another way of sharing from within the Content tab. Select all the items, click Share, and then we can go and find the group that we want to share the items with. So we click OK and Save, and then we have it. All that data is, again, shared with the relevant individual.
So moving on to scenario 3. We can imagine now that we're working for a large national data repository that wants to share a subset of their data with a local council or authority. We want to ensure we're doing this securely and only sharing what is required in a private way. For this scenario, ArcGIS enables us to do this quickly and easily by taking a selection or a cut of the data we need to share using a hosted feature layer view. This allows us to create a view or subset of the data that we wish to share and distribute this across the required groups. So let's take a look at what this looks like in practice. As mentioned, I'm a data manager at that repository, and I wish to share that subset of data on the screen here, which is an analysis output from the north of England. Hosted feature layer views are ideal for helping you control access to the same hosted feature layer by providing a set view of the dataset and different editing settings if required. To begin, I need to select Create View Layer, and this opens the Create View Layer configuration page where we're able to choose the layers we want to include in the view, decide the actual view we want to specify, and finally create the view. My layer has been added by default, and we can simply press Next to use the Define View to filter this to the Greater Manchester area, which I'm interested in. I could also define a view using fields or an area of interest. So here I'm selecting Filter, and I'll create an expression using the county name as the field and Greater Manchester as the area. So I can quickly use this expression builder on the left, and we can see the map will soon update to highlight that resulting selection. We can use the arrows to navigate back to the previous screen and press Next. All I need to do now is set a name for the view that's appropriate. So I'll simply add Greater Manchester to the name, and I'll also add it to the summary folder down here, so it's clear what I've done for this view layer. All I need to do now is press Create, and this starts creating that view. As it's loading, I want to make a point about how clear and easy it has been to create a view and how, as an organization, you could begin to create different curated views for different areas of data. For example, creating different views based on departments or different roles viewing the data. So you could give editing rights to a data editor, but view-only rights to a data reviewer. Now that the view layer has been created, I need to double check that the view layer is not editable. So I go down and check the settings, where I could also update the hosted feature layer view definition. And I'm happy with those settings. So we can now return and we can click the share button to share as we have done before using the edit group sharing button. And I'm sharing it with that Greater Manchester sharing group. So I'm now finished and I can repeat the process for any further content I wish to share views of.
So, the fourth scenario that we have is a little different. Rather than sharing content from one person to another, two neighboring London boroughs want to jointly manage data and apps in ArcGIS Online that concern both of them evenly. For example, utilities information that crosses over their borders. For the benefit of the residents in the boroughs, it makes sense to produce one app, but it would be best for both organizations to have editorial rights. So, what's the solution here? Well, this is an ideal situation for partner collaboration between the two ArcGIS online organizations, whereafter they can share and edit data within shared update groups. So, Oliver? So let's have a look at setting up partner sharing between these two organizations and creating a shared update group. So I'm going to use an example between our Green Shoots portal and Commercial Markets portal. So first we're going to go to Settings and then go to Collaborations. And we can see that there has already been a collaboration set up between the two. But let's click in to start a collaboration to see the process. So from here, we can specify the URL of the organization that we want to start this collaboration with, and then some options, as well as adding a customized message to the organization to make the invite a bit more personal. We can also send out up to 9 invitations at once if we configure a CSV file correctly. You can actually have up to 10 partner collaborations in your organization. So whilst it's a one-to-one relationship, you can do it multiple times. But actually, to save us waiting for everything in the backend to run, we're going to look in more detail at that collaboration that already exists. You can manage collaboration coordinators from this screen here too, which are the people who are responsible for the collaboration and who can also create shared update groups. But speaking of those groups, let's go and create one of them now. So if we go into groups, in the same way as before, and we click create group, we can give it a name and then customize our settings as we see fit. Now, we only want group members to be able to view this, and who can be in this group, we're going to select partner collaboration and my organization's members only. And then importantly, at the bottom, we're going to turn on the option of shared update, which will allow both of these organizations to manage and edit apps within it. So we then press save and create our group. The option to create shared update groups is reserved for those with the administrator or facilitator role, but you can add the permission to any custom role you like. We can see that this group has the tags shared update and partnered, which helps you find it easier in a list. And we're just going to add someone from the partner organization, which just happens to be an account that I have on it. So if we invite that user, we can now add items to group, which we would like the other members of the partnered organization to be able to configure and edit. So let's just put some data in here. That'll do. And now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to the perspective from the other partnered organization. So here we've jumped into the commercial markets portal, which is the other account that I just invited. I'm going to quickly refresh the page so that the invitation appears at the top. And as you might have done before, we're going to join this group. There we go. We can locate that group in our groups list. And we can see all of the content that we just added from the perspective of the other account. So if we click in and view the details of, for example, this dashboard, we can see that on the right-hand side, not only is there the option to view the dashboard, but we also have the option to edit the dashboard. And also, we have the option to edit and configure things like the description and the summary of this app, which we wouldn't have access to in usual group collaborations. So our final scenario involves a regional forestry office that needs to share data from their ArcGIS Enterprise account to a central ArcGIS Online organization to contribute their regional information to a national database. Situations like this tend to arise when a company gets large and different parts of the organization use different ArcGIS Enterprise deployments. This goal in this scenario could be achieved through a distributed collaboration, which would allow data to move from ArcGIS Enterprise to ArcGIS Online easily. In fact, all the regional data offices could contribute their data this way. It would also work if there were two ArcGIS enterprise organizations. So, from the same options page that you would create the partner collaboration, you can create a distributed collaboration. The parties in a distributed collaboration are either designated as a host or a guest. When an ArcGIS Online organization is involved, it is always labeled as the host, although this doesn't affect the function, just where the collaboration is managed from. If the collaboration is set up to send and receive, then when items are placed in a linked group, it will copy over to the other organization's linked group. However, it can also be set to only send or only receive, depending on the nature of the collaboration. In the case of our forestry example, the central data repository would only need to receive data from the regional office. As long as the data is set up to allow syncing, as the data is updated in the regional office, it should update on the side of the data repository. In another example, a company may have an ArcGIS enterprise deployment for business analytics and an ArcGIS online organization for public communication and further sharing. An individual may use distributed collaboration in this scenario to share content between the two accounts. So, in summary, there are lots of different ways to collaborate in the ArcGIS system. We've covered the most common ones here. You can use these methods to easily maintain one source of truth with your data. Whilst distributed and partner collaboration can be very useful in some cases, today we've shown three common examples where we could support the kind of collaboration that's needed just by using different aspects and options of regular group sharing. There's a lot you can achieve with just the simplest and easiest form of sharing in the ArcGIS system. Thank you very much for listening. We'd love if you could join us again for our next webinar, which is on Wednesday, the 21st of September, and called Collect Accurate Data First Time with Suite for ArcGIS. We'll now be taking questions. All right. We can see that there are a few in the chat already. Okay. Right. So the first question comes from Glenn Wilson, who asks, is it possible to create views of layers that aren't hosted? Right. Ollie, are you able to field this one as you did the demonstration with hosted layers?
Yeah, so the purpose of a hosted layer is to ensure that you have a feature that's been uploaded to ArcGIS Online, or if you're using an enterprise deployment, ArcGIS Enterprise. If you were looking to create a subset of a data that wasn't hosted, most likely you'd be trying to do that offline, maybe using a desktop deployment. So you'd be in ArcMap or ArcGIS Pro. So the point there would be you'd be able to filter that data exactly the same, but you'd be looking at creating a offline. So you'd be looking at saving that to a geodatabase as its own filtered data set. So it would use the same mechanism or same process of defining the area you want to work with. However, it'd just be a simple filter, and then you'd have to save that data separately. Whereas when you're working within ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Enterprise especially, you have that ability to create those views, which give you a lot more flexibility on the views, the rights, and the sharing with any organizations or other colleagues you're collaborating with.
Thanks, Ollie. I do apologize. I missed a question from Vicky Short, um, who asks, is there a way of receiving an alert when a collaboration sync fails? Do you have an example script to monitor the sync status? Um, I'm not sure whether you're asking about a distributed or partner collaboration there, but if it fails, you should receive an error message. Um, if you'd like to, we will contact you afterwards about this for more detail, because I feel like that may need a little bit more investigation than we have time for right now.
Yeah, I can just add to that. I mean, there's two different sync settings available to you. There's sync immediately or there's scheduled syncs. And if either one of those failed, you'll see it in a status page, which is available through the collaboration section on either of your AGOL or enterprise deployments. So it's very clearly stated when a sync has failed.
Well, thanks. The next one is from Jones Cherry, who asks, if you do enable editing on a feature layer view, does this update the original dataset? In this case, if you enable editing on the view, it does not necessarily enable editing on the original dataset, but someone who has access to that particular view of the dataset could then edit the data. So the idea of a view is for you to send it to two different people who then will have different permissions of things to do with that data. So the setting itself doesn't change on the original data set, but the person with the editable view will be able to change and manipulate that data set. So the next question is from Michael Robb, who asks, can we share views of data and or apps with partner organizations or individuals who do not have an ArcGIS Online account without making that data public?
Do you want me to field that one, Rowan?
Yeah, I'm just sorry, I was having to think. Yeah, do go ahead.
Yes. So I don't actually think there's a way there, Michael. So basically, when you're thinking about sharing your data with the public or as far as possible, you need to ensure that your data is as secure. So the basic process or mantra you should use is, if you're releasing your data as far as possible, so it's going out to the public, you should make sure it's not editable. But that also means if you're trying to share with companies or organizations, individuals that don't have a goal, the only way they'd be able to see it is by releasing that data as public, which would mean that anyone would be able to come in and view the data. Hence why you'd look to make sure you don't have editable rights on that. Doesn't really answer your questions like in its entirety. So I think that's another one. We'll take a note of it and we'll come back to you with further details. But the point there is about ensuring that when you're sharing your data as widely as possible, you need to make sure that Joe Blogs from a different company or who just stumbles across your data doesn't have the ability to edit it and change any work or processes that you've got in place.
Thanks, Ollie. The next question on the list is from Rob Gordon, who asks, is it possible to transfer content ownership via a partnered collaboration? I'm not sure about that one. I haven't actually experimented. Do you know, Ollie?
No, so the purpose of collaborations would be to have those two sets of data sets sitting on either AGOL accounts. So yeah, I'm not sure on the content ownership, but obviously you can have those two data sets mirrored. So I'm not sure what the purpose of transferring content would be.
Okay, thanks very much. Devrastos asks, can we share the view publicly whilst keeping the feature dataset private shared? Yeah, I believe that's possible. You can share a view of a data set publicly. For example, if there was a subset of your data which you wanted the public to see, you could keep the rest of the data set privately shared and then share a view or a section of that publicly. I'm conscious of time, so any questions that we do not get to, we will get back to you personally via email. I don't know. I'm just skimming over for some quick answers. Jones Cherry asks, can the same app and data be shared with multiple groups with different edit levels? Um, it, so I believe different views of data can be shared with different groups, and you can assign each of those different views different edit levels. I believe you would need to make and you can customize what is in an app. So you might need to make, if you wanted different people to edit apps, edit data in different ways, you would need to create different apps which have different editing capabilities. Thomas Hayden asks, can different people within the same group have different levels of editability? For example, two people need to update a data set, but others only need to see it and not edit. So for that, it would probably be best to create different views of the data set, one with editing enabled and one without editing enabled, and then you could share it with different people in two different groups, these different groups of people in different groups. So they would still, that's how you would control the access to editing the data. Gail asks, with a partnered collaboration, where does the content, data layers, apps, etc. sit? Is it on both organizational sites or the one which invited the other organization? I believe it rests on the account that it originated on. So it will be stored on whichever account originally owned and created it. So if it was shared to that group, and the person who shared it to the group, it still resides on their account, although everyone else in that group, if it's a shared update group, will still have access to it in the same way. All right, I'm conscious that we are running over a little bit, so I think we're going to wrap up there and get back to people individually. I apologize that we haven't got through all the questions. Please understand there are quite a few of them, and some of them are fairly in depth. There has been a feedback form that has been posted in the chat, so we would really appreciate if you could fill that out. And thank you very much for coming today. We hope to hear from you and hope to see you in the next webinar. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.